You have 5 minutes to do so, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank all those who have spoken, delegates of states, NGOs, national human rights institutions, for your insights, guidance, and words of encouragement. As to the question on incorporating gender perspectives, I am, of course, committed to seeking out gender perspective in all aspects of my work. I see this as being achieved primarily by seeking out and listening to the views and concerns of indigenous women themselves. I am aware that indigenous women have concerns that arise from their particular status as indigenous persons and as women, and it is important that they themselves be heard about the nature of those concerns and about their priorities for action. As I stated in my report, next month I will be participating in an Asia-Pacific consultation on violence against women, along with a special rapporteur on violence against women, Ms. Yakim Turk. I've worked hard to ensure that indigenous women themselves are well represented at the event and involved in its planning. I've also been asked about my priorities and interests for thematic studies. Let me combine my response to this question with these questions with a response to the questions about how I view my work in relation to the newly established expert mechanism. Of course, I'm concerned about the issue of indigenous languages raised by the delegate of New Zealand yesterday. As she rightfully pointed out, the language is a cultural bond that has been long and still is under threat for indigenous peoples. I'm also concerned and interested, in fact, and been starting to focus on other thematic issues as pointed out in my reports to the Council. And these include issues of transnational corporations, particularly with regard to extractive activities or extraction of natural resources on indigenous territories, and the recognition of indigenous legal systems. But I've refrained from laying out a program of thematic studies because of the relatively recent creation of the expert mechanism, which has as its core function providing the Council with thematic expertise. I'm quite mindful of the Council's call to avoid duplication of work and want to assure that my own work as special rapporteur complements rather than duplicates the work of the expert mechanism and other institutions, including the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. I will be attending the first session of the expert mechanism early next month, and we'll be consulting with its members at that session. And at a subsequent seminar, we are organizing in order to ensure complementarity rather than duplication of our respective roles. And in response to the delegate of Canada, I am quite confident that the results of that seminar will be made available to states and others. Let me also add that in light of the establishment of the expert mechanism, whose function is to engage in thematic studies, I now see the role of special rapporteurs focusing more than ever before on specific situations in which indigenous peoples' human rights are being threatened. And in accordance with my mandate, my attention is to be attentive to problem situations and try to advance solutions through constructive dialogue and by building or borrowing from best practices. And this leads me to the questions about the methods for establishing or promoting constructive dialogue between indigenous peoples, governments, and other interested parties. There are several dimensions to this task, but first and foremost, it entails ensuring that indigenous peoples' voices are heard and taken seriously. And this requires building sensitivity to indigenous peoples' concerns on all levels and establishing consultation and other procedures that are adequately geared to indigenous peoples' distinctive cultural patterns and their own decision-making institutions. I see my own role in this regard as helping to open or improve lines of communication where they are lacking, identifying and raising indigenous peoples' concerns when they might have been overlooked, and promoting a positive outlook that is always looking towards solutions. In response to the question on behalf of the European Union on how the Council can assist me in this regard, it can do so by encouraging states to be responsive to communications from me, as many indeed have, and to allow flexibility and creativity in the manner in which I engage them. Just briefly on cooperation with other international agencies, especially the ILO, the International Labour Organization, I see this cooperation in areas of providing technical expertise, monitoring conditions, exchange of information, and conflict resolution. Finally, I would like to mention just briefly the position expressed by the delegate of China that there are no indigenous peoples in China. I understand the sensitivities that many states have on the issue of the coverage of the term indigenous peoples. I would like to, however, encourage a human rights-based approach, one which looks to the particular issues involved and the human rights dimensions of those issues. I see issues that are common to indigenous peoples throughout the world, and the focus that I will be advancing is one on those particular issues and the human rights dimensions of them, as I believe my predecessor did in his communication on the situation of Tibet